We've talked a lot about filters in the last few videos, and hopefully this will be the culmination of that. So we're going to talk about and listen to how the filter plays a big role in selecting a synthesizer, in making, something like a white noise sweep or an effects transition, and also with full-blown mix automation. And these are three areas where filters and the filter you choose can play a pretty big role in the final sound and the end result. At the end of the video, we'll try to put this all into context and wrap things up a little bit. We're going to begin with synthesizers, and here we have Plugin Alliance's Nifonium. I'm just picking these synthesizers at random. I'm not saying you need to get them, you don't need to get them. We're really just focused on the filters and the settings and the sounds. So with Nifonium, you'll recognize right away when we go to the filter section, we really only have access to one filter model, one filter type, and that you can find right here. So there's obviously a lot of other settings and factors that produce this overall timbre of this instrument. We have things like, the amp mode out here at the output. There's feedback stuff going on, all that good stuff. I think internally it's trying to model, a bunch of tubes. So it's trying to be this kind of very rich analog tube type synthesizer, and then you can combine it with additional effects up here. But at the end of the day, there's only one filter. And if you don't like the way that filter sounds, or if you need something with a lot of resonance and you don't like the way that's reacting, this isn't going to be the right instrument to use, and that's totally fine. So a lot of plugin manufacturers are always going to say, this is the one instrument to rule them all. You buy this synthesizer, you don't need anything else. Of course, that's not true. Like, everything depends on the situation. And so if you asked me, if I could only have one or the other, and luckily we're not in that world, but if I could only have either Nifonium or, the internal Polymer synthesizer in Bitwig, of course I'm going to go with Polymer, because I can get right out of the box something much cleaner that then if I wanted to try and after the fact kind of emulate more of a richer, warmer, tubier sound, I could do that. But with Polymer, I could also get something that's just like really bright and just digital sheeny if I need that as well. As a great comparison to Nifonium, we've brought up Diva. With Diva, we can do stuff like change the oscillator modes, change the filter modes, etc., etc. And so it's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that Diva has a lot more flexibility, especially as it comes to the filter selections. And so when you're making a sound and you know that it needs to fit into a production, Diva might be that little bit more flexible where you can find the settings that are going to work. So we'll listen to these different modes. Here's the ladder filter. And we also have a 24 dB option. And then let's go over to the cascade. This one also has a clean and a rough. Might be more obvious to hear that if we went down an octave. Then we have the multi-mode. Okay, we can change this. And then we have the bite. This one's a little bit more digital in nature. And we have another revision that's just a very unique sound. That's pretty cool. And then we also have the one from, I believe it's like the Ubix effects suite. So another kind of digital style filter with some different modes that you can obviously play around with and get some really unique and interesting filter shapes out of. So that's Diva as it relates to Nifonium. One's not better than the other. One's just a little bit more flexible. So depending on your situation, depending on your production, maybe it makes sense to use one versus the other versus any of the other instruments that you have. And my recommendation is, again, really take the time to try to listen to and hear the differences of your instruments, not just the filter section, but the entirety of it, so that you can start to build up that memory bank to know what you want to pull to in any given situation. I thought it might be kind of interesting to bring in Plugin Doctor and just look at a couple of different plugins. So we can see the difference in the curves and the shapes and what you can do with various parameters. You could also look at the harmonic analysis to see if any additional dynamics are being brought in. That's something that you can kind of listen for a little bit more than visually see. So here we have Air Windows Y Low Pass. And Air Windows has lots of great filters and additional plugins to check out, especially for, very specific tasks. So here we can see this basic low pass, and we have some controls like the resonance and then resonant edge. That's something you'd want to listen for a little bit more. But yeah, here's just a quick example of what one filter could look like and some of the various parameters you have to adjust it. So here we have the Brainworks Clean Sweep Pro. Something's going crazy with the plugin in here. It doesn't like it, but that's fine. We can now just kind of, again, look at the different shapes and things that we can come up with. And let's just go to like order 3, just to make this interesting as we swap through the various different filter models. And you can now see how these are changing. And obviously, these are going to have a great impact on the sound. So let's go back to this one. And then again, we can kind of adjust and play around with that ripple control. And it's just unique and interesting to see these various things, especially as we now move on to kind of talking about sweeps and how much of an impact the various shapes can have on the sound. Here we have a block of custom pink noise from Serum. And what we're going to do is we're going to apply a few different filters. We'll just do like an automation sweep basically, and then we'll be able to listen to and hear the differences in the end result of this little riser effect that we're going to create. So we'll go ahead and just enable all of these, and let's just find a starting point. That's probably fine. And then we'll just go ahead and do one of these maneuvers where we'll sweep it up. We'll give it a little bit of a ramp, and then we'll shut it down. So there's the sound with this filter, and obviously there's a pretty decent amount of resonance on it. But what we can do is we can bounce this out. So I've already gone ahead and done one more example with Serum, and I set up the Scream low pass, and I intentionally had the settings pretty extreme. And we can go ahead and take a listen to what that one sounds like. Get that nice ringing from the Scream. And now this time I've gone and I've set up like about as clean as we're going to get. So I have the BX Clean Sweep Pro. I've set it to Butterworth. I haven't even touched the order, and it's just going, up and down about as smoothly as you're going to get. So let's take a listen. Cool. So we'll bounce this one, and then we'll maybe just do one more example. And then the final one we'll just take a listen to and compare with is the Filter Mini from Arturia. So let's go ahead and take a listen to this one. So pretty cool. And I'll just bounce this as our last one. And then just to finish this example out, we'll listen to all 4 of these just back to back, and we'll get a chance to then hear those differences between them. There is a little bit of a gain mismatch. Maybe I'll turn this one up a couple. And yeah, let's just take a listen and keep in mind that the gain is going to change. So that's Bitwig. That's the Serum Scream. That's the Butterworth with no resonance. And then we've got that Mini Moog. And to be honest with you, depending on the style of music that you're making or the situation, any one of these could work, maybe just not that really resonant-y ringing. But as a special effect, you never know. So that's just to show you that the filter that you choose for your sweep effects or your other transition effects can play a very big role in the overall final timbre of that sound. Here we have an example of applying a filter to like an entire mix. In real life, this isn't super common. Obviously, DJs do this all the time, but on your own productions, it's going to be very rare that you would do something like this, but it's just to demonstrate the sound of a filter on a more complex piece of audio. A lot of times you might do this to groups. So you might be slowly fading in, your lead group of synths, or you might do this on the drums at certain parts of the track, all that good stuff. So here is our little loop that we have. Obviously, that's not going to win us a Grammy or anything, but that's okay. What we're going to do is now turn on our filter, and we're just going to apply a few different filters and listen to the difference. I have no resonance on here, so of course, like I said before, when you're in the actual production you're working on, you have to experiment with stuff like the slope and the resonance and just find what works best for whatever part you're working on. All right, so this time I've brought on the low high and I used one of the presets, Hot Analog Low Pass, and let's go ahead and take a listen to this one. So this time we're really getting creative. We've brought on that, Chebyshev Model 1, Order 6, played around with the ripple. This one's going to sound radically different, but it's going to be pretty cool. And finally, what we've brought in is the drop. And this one's cool because it's got a bunch of different filter modes and a drive and a resonance. And I've played around with it a little bit so that we could, again, get a very unique sound. And let's just take a listen to it. And we'll go ahead and now just listen to all of these back to back, starting with the Bitwig. We know that the gain's not matched perfectly. We know that the filter frequencies are not going to be matched up perfectly, but that's not really what we're listening for. We're listening to kind of that unique characteristic of the filter as it sweeps up, as it comes down, coupled with the resonance. So let's just go ahead and listen to these. I hope this has been as interesting and inspiring to you as it has been to me. And while something like this doesn't really make sense on this particular track and on the bus, it might work somewhere else. It might work on a found sound or some kind of interesting synthesizer that you need to bring in and bring out. Whereas something like the Bitwig filter might be perfect for just your average, pop song or EDM song, and you're trying to keep things as clean and pristine as you possibly can. Needless to say, the sky's the limit here, and I just hope that, you have something you can experiment with, or that you're thinking about filters in a new way or in a way that you haven't thought of previously. So we're just going to wrap up the video real quick and then call it a day. So just to try to wrap things up a little bit and put it in context, why are we spending this time listening to these different filters, talking about these different scenarios? And for anybody who's watched my videos for a long time, you kind of know my overarching philosophy is that learning music production, it's not that hard. Like the technical stuff, just knowing what everything does, how it works, like that's not that difficult. The real challenge in music production is when you actually have to apply what you've learned to different situations. Whether you're producing music for a client or you're just kind of doing things on your own and you have a sound in your head or a style in your head, do you know what to grab or what to do when you encounter a problem, or you're just moving on to the next phase of the production? And filtering is one of the biggies, especially in electronic music. So when it comes to making a build and doing the automation, what filter do you want to use? Is the filter you grabbed first, is that working? Is that causing a problem? Can you swap that out? Do you know how to do this? Do you know why you're doing this? These are the big questions, and that's kind of why we've gone over all of this. Or if you're doing a transition effect, that filter that you just used for the buildup might be different to that very specific white noise sweep. Or with synthesizers specifically, every synthesizer, I don't want to say every, but most synthesizers are capable of producing a pluck bass sound, for example, or a sustained sub bass or a lead or a pad or whatever. But is it the filter that is making sure that that fits with the other parts or the style of the track that you're making? And that's where you have to make these really tough decisions, because understanding what a low pass, a high pass, a band pass, a notch, understanding what these filters do is so easy. Like it's one of the most basic and core fundamental things in music production, and everybody can wrap their head around it. But suddenly when you're forced to apply it in a production in real time, do you know what you want to do? Do you have a plan? So I'm hoping that this video and the previous video can help you just that little tiny bit of when you get stuck in that situation, that you know that you have alternatives that you can go with and that you can try different things, so that hopefully you pick the right filter for the job and it ends up benefiting the production as compared to hurting it or, causing the listener to go, that doesn't sound quite right. So that's been the reason for making these filter videos. Of course, we're going to move on to some other stuff, but I just hope that that helps put things into context a little bit. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, take care.